On the planet of Jad, Hadrian Marlowe walks along a beach of white and black sand. He strides past several students of the acclaimed fire school, with a mountain spewing magma in the distance. This has been his home for more than 2 centuries since his escape from Imperial prison. Still presumably outcast from the Solon Empire for striking Emperor William the 23rd, Hadrian has spent his time here, away from the quiet and the war against the Cielcen. Hadrian's numerous wounds have also been healed, at the price of a vial of his blood. It is locked away in the vaults of the High Princes, who in their forays in eugenics hope to one day create a warrior with Hadrian's powers. On this day, however, he glances up and sees a black Imperial shuttle in the sky. Frowning, Hadrian returns to his villa, greeted by his servant Nima. An Imperial emissary by the name of Edward Albe hails him. Edward is from Imperial Intelligence, and brings Hadrian a formal pardon and a summons to Cartea. Hadrian immediately deduces the officer is part of Hapsis, the Imperial organization dedicated to researching the Quiet and Watchers. However, he no longer feels the fire to explore those mysteries, that spark having died with Balca on Perfugium. Hadrian turns to leave Edward, but then the young man also reveals Hadrian's father, Alistar Marlowe, died more than a century ago. He offers Hadrian a holograph from his brother Crispin, but is coldly dismissed. Later, Hadrian converses with Prince Aldea, discussing the state of the galaxy. Since the defeat at Perfugium, countless systems have been beset by the Minos Plague, a lethovirus that induces cancer-like growth in its victims. Additionally, the Lothrian Commonwealth has continued to grow in power and has begun attacking the border worlds of Jad. Nessus has also fallen to the Cielcen, attacked by an unimaginable force of 32 world ships. Only 7 had been needed to take Perfugium 2 centuries ago. Prince Aldea encourages Hadrian to read the Emperor's letter, which has remained untouched since Edward's visit. After speaking with the prince, Hadrian then heads to the Volcano School. There he sees his daughter drilling with other students, part of her training to become a Maescalos swordmaster. Her name is Cassandra, one of the most talented students of the Academy and born from Vulca's phylactery with contributions from Hadrian 40 years ago. He is very proud of her, but also sees in Cassandra a youthful desire to explore the stars. Hadrian himself has become jaded with the war, tired of the Empire and its politics. He has no desire to help or endure more thankless hardship. Several days later, he discovers Cassandra rummaging through his papers. She finds the Emperor's letter and Crispin's holograph. Hadrian finally opens the letter and learns Hapsis has found a monumental, but that it soon may be compromised by the Cielcen. It also instructs him to trust no one but Director Oberlin. Cassandra, who doesn't know the meaning of the letter's contents, asks Hadrian what he really was in his past. He has long tried to hide it from her all these years, but time may soon be running short. Cassandra is a full woman grown, though untested in war, and is ready to take on the trial of the heart to become a full Maescalos of Jad. Hadrian then turns to Crispin's holograph. His brother reveals their father had finally become a lord before his death, and their sister Sabine is now Countess of Caria. He himself has not been permitted to have an heir by the High College, effectively ending Marlowe rule on Delos. Crispin ends his message scorning Hadrian for abandoning his family, disgusted he never bothered to visit after the death of their mother. The message ends, and after a moment of silent deliberation, Hadrian decides he will travel to answer the Emperor's summons. Additionally, Cassandra will accompany after undergoing the trial of the heart. Hadrian can do nothing but watch and wait for his daughter as she enters the Temple of Eternal Fire. With bated breath, he then sees 2 figures emerge, one a military officer, but the other in the Mendias of a swordmaster. Cassandra, his beloved daughter, has passed the trials. After she recovers, Hadrian shows her the Ascalon, where Edward is waiting as well. Hadrian glares from a distance as the 2 young soldiers seem to take an interest in each other. Preparations for the voyage conclude, and Cassandra buckles in for her first space flight from Jad. While her eyes glow with excitement, however, Hadrian's are closed with a sense of foreboding. After many long years, he is now leaving the paradise and peace he found in Jad and returning to the empire he turned his back on. They rendezvous with the imperial ship ISV Troglida, where Hapsis director Friedrich Oberlin greets Hadrian. He learns they are heading to investigate ruins on Sabratha, a desert world. Also on board is a company of Urchtani auxiliaries, another call back to Hadrian's past. Hadrian teaches Cassandra about the Watchers, but does not tell her of his relationship with the Quiet. Later, he meets privately with Oberlin, Albe, Tor Rossum, and Oberlin's secretary. Hadrian is shown a holograph of a Viardu artifact, which he recognizes to be an atlas. On Sabratha, Hapsis has discovered a new site in a region that was underwater at the height of that empire. A local team was sent by the governor to investigate, but something went wrong. A series of images is displayed of a corpse, the chest crushed and the body itself having 6 limbs and 2 conjoined heads. It also appears to be perfectly symmetrical. More bodies are shown, and in a video recording a physician raises the arm of one. Somehow, the other 2 bodies beside it also raise their arms in unison. Oberlin believes they are all of the same matter, some inexplicable form of entanglement. The director postulates that the Watchers are higher beings. The physical manifestations of them, such as the skull on Yue, are only fragments. With Hadrian's help, Oberlin hopes to find and kill a monumental on Sabratha. They have developed a special weapon, and Oberlin also reveals a monumental was killed centuries ago on Nari. Hapsis has constructed a massive EMP of sorts, intended to disrupt the patterns of force emitted from the monumentals when they descend from higher dimensions. They make landfall on Sabratha, reaching the dead city of Fanamhara. It has been 13 years since Hadrian and Cassandra left Jad. The ruins of the city are massive, and Hadrian asks to be shown around. There he sees the remains of large murals in what used to be a city square for the Viartu. On the mural is a circle with 3 disturbingly human eyes, their depiction of one of the Watchers. Hadrian settles into the camp near the ruins, and also examines the bodies. He observes them moving in the same manner, and also learns that when a sliver of bone is removed from one, that same piece simply vanishes from the others. The scientists and Tor Rossum believe something happened to disrupt the body's relationship to 3-dimensional space. Hadrian suddenly has a revelation, and kneels down to examine a body closer. He notices the edges of it seem to be blurred, seeing it lay across different dimensions almost. Hadrian presses gently on each side of the conjoined head, and somehow it merges into one. The other bodies also mysteriously disappear. The weapon to kill the monumental is brought down, and Hadrian tours the ruins more. He finds several dark marks in the alien stone, indicating it was somehow burnt. As time passes, it becomes more certain a Watcher had killed the past team, but Hadrian's arrival does not seem to have brought it back out of the dark. Months go by with little breakthrough, and Cassandra grows closer with Albe despite Hadrian's misgivings. He still does not trust anyone except Oberlin, per the Emperor's letter. On one expedition, Hadrian and a team of researchers come across a massive stage with a dais upon it, and on it are the massive black bones of a 6-fingered hand, one of the dead Watchers. Hadrian touches the bones with his bare hand, and then suddenly a body falls from above and lands just beside him. It is another engineer, and the garbled comms seem to convey he jumped, coinciding when Hadrian touched the hand. Oberlin decides to remove the hand from deep inside the mountain chamber and bring it to the surface. Hadrian is wary, but the director is confident in the new NEM weapon. Hadrian instead urges Oberlin to detonate the weapon immediately and destroy the city, but the director is steadfast. Excavations continue for more months, with more history of the Viartu being uncovered. Hadrian learns that similar to the Cielcin, the Watchers had chosen a king to unite the warring factions of the Viartu against the Quiet, dubbed the Liar. He becomes certain there is another link of sorts between the Watchers and the Quiet, but it has eluded him thus far. The digs have taken place around a large mountain, and from time to time Hadrian flies out with the spotters. The months turn to years, Hadrian studying constantly with Dr. Tibur Valeriev and Tor Rossum. Yet nothing substantial is discovered, and it seems the desert has thrown their comm system into chaos. Then on a flight with Cassandra, Hadrian's daughter spots a distant crash of sorts in the desert. They fly down to investigate and find 2 dead people buried together. It is Cassandra's first brush with real death. Hadrian then notices the shattered glass has made circles around the wreckage, and with a chill realizes the Watcher caused the crash. He looks up and suddenly sees a dark figure in the distance. It calls out to him Zay Naaman, Muzu Anam, and vanishes. Hadrian chases after it, but finds no footprints. A confused Cassandra and her Chtauni flyer catch up to him, having noticed nothing, and Hadrian becomes certain he had just spotted the Watcher. The question then turns as to why the Watcher would have chosen to strike down the shuttle, which was piloted by 2 deserters of the expedition looking to sell Viartu artifacts. Hadrian worries the Watcher will attack again once the hand is finally moved to the surface, and cautions the risk of unleashing it on the galaxy. He then learns that in several days, the nearby town will hold a colosso in his honor. That night, he has dinner with Cassandra. Hadrian learns from Minima one of the Chtauni patrols failed to check in, and decides to follow up with one of the commanders. Hadrian then hears a lamp shatter outside, something unheard by the others. He suddenly falls into his powers, and across his vision sees all the lamps of the camp flickering as if a great shadow had passed over them. He immediately gives orders to alert Oberlin, as then all the lamps abruptly go out. Hadrian rushes to Oberlin's quarters, finding his secretary Lasaris gone. He pounds on the door, and gets an officer to key it open when there is no response. As it opens, a knife missile flashes out and kills the officer. Hadrian destroys it by finding the one possibility where he catches the weapon in his hand, and rushes inside to find Oberlin dead. Perhaps most disturbingly, the assassination implies that there are human saboteurs afoot. Hadrian runs back to the command center, alerting everyone that the missing Chtauni patrol is dead and that their spotty comms are likely due to malicious interference. Soldiers are ready to cross the camp, and Hadrian comes to suspect extra Solarian involvement. He races back to the Ascalon as gunfire is heard on the outskirts of the camp. The expeditionary team has no choice but to retreat, and then a dead Chtauni falls in front of Hadrian. From it rises out an Ahute, and then a wave of Cielsen falls upon the Hapsis forces. Dark siege towers are seen in the distance, and Hadrian notes the attacking Cielsen bear the white hand of Dora Yeka. A Cielsen world ship appears, and Hadrian senses another presence. He sees the Watcher, somehow sensing it to be a woman, and again it speaks to him. Hadrian decides to head to the ship Rhea to find the Perseus NEM designed to kill the Watcher. The battle rages on as Hadrian doles out orders, but then Cassandra calls out to him. A knife missile is floating dangerously close to her throat, and then a prone Lasaris begins to laugh. However, it turns out to be a pale creature that Hadrian recognizes as a painted man, a similar model to the one he killed on March Station years ago. He learns it is working for the Cielsen general Muzugara, and has impersonated Lasaris for a long while. The painted man holds Cassandra and Hadrian prisoner, and takes them to a vast host of Cielsen warriors. The ship Rhea has been utterly conquered, the camp overrun. A Cielsen captain called Ramanthanu addresses the painted man as Kaibalian. Prince Muzugara then arrives, another Vayadan of Dora Yeka, accompanied by a Mino sorcerer named Gaiska. Muzugara moves to strike Hadrian, but he uses his powers to manipulate the hand to pass clean through him. Hadrian learns the Cielsen have come to free the Watcher and transport it back to Dora Yeka. He and Cassandra are marched back to Fanamhara, with the plan being to use Hadrian to bait out the Watcher. Lightning then strikes the ground around them, and the Cielsen are attacked by Chtauni survivors. However, they are fought off, unable to free Hadrian and Cassandra. The Cielsen make it to the inner chamber of the ruins, Muzugara overcome with religious awe. The prince brings forth one of its lieutenants to be sacrificed as 2 Minos technicians open a palanquin. Inside is a strange black machine of some kind. Muzugara kills the lieutenant as Cassandra screams, and the surrounding Cielsen chant in reverence. Nothing happens at first, and the captain Ramanthanu is then pushed forwards. Enraged, it kills another Cielsen, whose blood mixes with the fallen lieutenant's before the large dais with the Watcher bones. Suddenly, the blood begins to flow towards the hand and rises into the air as droplets. The Cielsen bodies vanish, and the black bones curl to almost form a fist. Then the hand itself shrinks and vanishes. But we were not alone in the Pantheon. An oppressive weight hung upon the air, the sense that we were all watched by unseen, malicious eyes. A voice fills Hadrian's head, seeming to speak the strange language he heard by the crashed shuttle. He shuts his eyes as a black presence washes over his mind, and when he opens them again, a black figure is standing in front of Muzugara. It towers over the Cielsen, and in his vision Hadrian sees the Watcher and every other potential, not as variations, but as the one same creature. Across every possible present, it moved at once. It stood astride time itself like a colossus, its unseen feet anchored beyond the horizon of my sight. Muzugara asked to be made into a champion of the Watchers, looking to reclaim power from Dorayeka. The Watcher moves towards the prince, and then a white tendril grabs its face and forces it to gaze at the Watcher. Muzugara begins to scream as more tendrils emerge, and the Minos technicians activate a siphon of some sort. A second black figure suddenly appears and destroys the pelican. Muzugara is then pulled in several directions, and its body refracts like the corpses back in Medica as it is thrown across the Pantheon. The Watcher then suddenly vanishes, and Hadrian learns the planet's magnetic field effectively traps the Watcher by containing its energies. Then, the glow spheres left by the expedition in the chamber go out, and the bodies of Muzugara disappear. A vast shadow floods the chamber, and then a Cielson somehow falls off the ground and vanishes into the darkness above. The host breaks into chaos and flees the chamber with no sense of order. Hadrian frees himself and Cassandra, and looks to hunt down Gazka and Kybalion. He catches a glimpse of a red Minos cloak and chases after it. Hadrian destroys another knife missile, but cuts himself and exposes his blood to the poisonous copper arsenic walls of the ruins. He and Cassandra corner Kybalion and manage to kill him. They race to the surface, and are soon attacked by a squad of Cielson. They are forced to flee when they unleash the Nahute. Cassandra turns the corner, but then Hadrian suddenly finds himself alone. All light vanishes, and he knows he has become trapped in another vision. Hadrian then hears singing of some kind, and following it finds his way in the dark somehow back to the Pantheon where the bloodbath took place. Again he senses a large shadow passing over him, and then sees the Watcher sitting on the ruined pelican. It speaks to him, but he cannot understand it. 6 black figures appear to Hadrian, then coalesce into the massive form of the Watcher. Hadrian lunges forward with his sword, but the Watcher grabs the point and stops it cold. Visions of Viartu then swarm around him, lifted in the air and crushed to reveal mechanical bodies, all the while chanting the name of the Watcher, Ushara. Hadrian then notices Ushara inexplicably has human feet and hands. He uses his powers to free his blade and strike at the Watcher, but he is now fighting a being cognizant of his abilities. Hadrian then sees himself as an old man, holding the hands of a pale woman. She stabs him with a splinter of white stone, and the other Hadrian bleeds red, then white, then silver. Hadrian breaks out of the vision, and then looks up to see the black shadow of the Watcher and the same woman, apparently the form of Ushara. She is of terrible pale beauty, with deep black eyes and hands of 6 fingers. Hadrian is hurled through visions of the past, witnessing the decay of the Viartu settlement on Sabratha. He sees this through the eyes of Ushara, senses her isolation as she is forced to hunt down lifeforms on the desolate planet for heat, energy, and sustenance. For after the waters dried up, Ushara became trapped on Sabratha, and Hadrian is shocked to see the Watchers feel in the same way as humans somehow. Ushara appears to him again, and shows Hadrian another vision in which he leaves Sabratha. Ships found us, carried us to the stars. I saw myself seated on the solar throne, and in the place of Selena there sat a black queen, Ushara herself. Across the galaxy, the red sun of the old emperors was setting, and in its place black banners arose, and the star that fluttered upon their fields had 5 points, not 12. My star, a new empire, a second empire, my empire. I saw pale princes with hair like the night, 6-fingered princes with violet eyes, numerous as the stars and deathless, a dynasty of half-gods, and I a sovereign eternal. For 10,000 years I reigned. My ships crashed across the void, established beachheads in the clouds of Magellan, in Andromeda, in Triangulum, Pegasus. The Chantry was overthrown, its copper dome shattered, and in its place my priests erected spiral ziggurats upon whose summits Basarids and Cloth of Night offered sacrifice to the gods, my kin. 1,000,000 years I reigned, 10 million years. Hadrian, however, rejects this future and Ushara's attempted seduction of him. The illusion breaks, and her beauty crumbles and reveals a multi-eyed, winged, and armed creature stretching across many dimensions. He knows in that moment it was a mistake to draw Ushara out, and that she must be destroyed at any cost. Hadrian flees the Pantheon and makes it back to the surface, where a desperate battle still rages. Music is faintly heard on the wind, and he recognizes it as the Song of Ushara. Then, 6 apparitions of her appear again, and converge on him to form a 6-fingered hand. It grabs Hadrian and lifts him into the sky, and suddenly 3 massive eyes appear to gaze at him. Hadrian sees the vision of his terrible empire once more, but rejects it again. In a final desperate move, he uses his powers to stare across time. Seeing Ushara folded out across all those potentials, he breaks the reality holding them in that moment, splintering the time she uses as a medium. Ushara releases him, and he falls back to the surface, using his powers again to survive. Hadrian manages to find Cassandra and the surviving men, and resolves to head back to kill Ushara. He brings some Hapsis men to his side, and takes the fight back to the Cielcin. Cassandra holds her own, and they fall back to the ruins. There's a tense standoff there, and Hadrian then calls out Ramanthanu to stand down, but the Cielcin surge forward. Suddenly, a grenade falls before them, within the toxin-coated walls. A brave legionnaire sacrifices herself and jumps on it, but the blast throws Hadrian and Cassandra back. A massive boom of thunder then erupts from the sky, and Hadrian looks up to see lightning shoot across the horizon and freeze in place. Ushara reappears, a massive eye looming in the sky as a nearby Cielcin is suddenly dragged upwards. Hadrian screams for Cassandra and the others to flee as a massive white form begins to slither under the sand in front of them. A humongous arm with a 6-fingered hand erupts from the desert, and then the full titanic body of Ushara. Cielcin and legionnaires alike are killed by lightning or are crushed in the air. Hadrian watches in horror as Cassandra begins to rise, and desperately grabs her wrist. Ushara thunders in his head, uttering "sacrifice." He channels his rage and gazes across his place in time, and defies Ushara by choosing a far-off moment where she temporarily does not exist. Ushara vanishes, but Hadrian knows the Watcher will return. He must find the NED and detonate it while the camp is evacuated. To his surprise, the Captain Ramanthanu approaches him and asks for mercy, kneeling before Hadrian. For Hadrian, the champion of the Lyre, has somehow defied the Watcher and in doing so upended the Cielcin faith. Ramanthanu offers to become Hadrian's slave, now believing the Quiet to be greater than the Watchers. Hadrian accepts and gains the service of 9 Cielcin warriors. He leads everyone back to the camp, which is being pillaged by Cielcin survivors. To his shock, Ramanthanu and its warriors circle him and Cassandra and defend them from the marauders. The captain even gives Hadrian its shield, and he sends Cassandra back to the Ascalon, and the Urchtani are called to fly the others to the Rhea. Upon reaching the destroyed Rhea, Hadrian leads his company to the bridge. He is able to hail the Hapsis commander Vimo Gaston and orders him to make a full retreat into the ruins, hoping it will shelter them from the bomb. He heads to the armory, battling more Cielcin alongside Ramanthanu, who by now has only 4 surviving warriors under its command. They find the NEM there destroyed, and Hadrian falls to his knees. The operation, he knows now, is a failure. Then, a message comes in from Edward Albe, who survived the battle. He is on the Ascalon with Cassandra, and Hadrian and the others rush to the ship. There, Edward proposes as a last-ditch effort. They take several EMP weapons from the nearby Hul's defense force and activate them in succession. It may be able to reactivate the Perseus weapon, and Hadrian feels hope, however faint, within him once more. He takes Ramanthanu and the Urchtani remaining to him and departs the Ascalon. They come across some grounded shuttles and find more glass circles. Terror comes over Hadrian as the nearby lights shatter, and the Cielcin siege towers suddenly explode. His head spins, and Hadrian suddenly begins to see double. He even sees himself kneeling on the ground, and begins to see through that Hadrian's eyes as well. Explosions and fire continue to litter the landscape, but then suddenly the flames go out. Then a light opened in the sky, a light from nowhere, without source or direction, a light spilling from some higher plane. Inhuman music filled the vast volume of air, falling like snow, like ash upon the cold and silent battlefield. It was like the sun was rising, drawing from the zenith of the sky. It was as if the sky opened, as if that light from nowhere made straight the coiled paths from other time and revealed that higher plane. The space beyond teemed with eyes lidless and pitiless. They slid across the heavens, fixed to great bands of glittering black, rotating rings within rings like the characters of her celestial speech, eyes seeing all. Ushara returns once more, now more powerful than ever from the energy of the destroyed camp. Her sheer scale and magnitude is incomprehensible, painting Hadrian as something utterly insignificant. In light and song, he and the others are lifted in the air, and Hadrian senses a deep hatred as well. I held Hadrian Marlowe in the palm of my innumerable hands, saw him tessellated across infinite variations, an insect thing of animate clay, a creature of slime and crude matter, possessed only by the faintest spark. Why should he hold so high a place in his esteem? Why had he set such pitiful creatures at the fulcrum of creation? Why were they closer to him than I who had drunk long and deeply of the light that was before the all? I who had been made before the stars, I who had crushed countless worlds to powder and bathed my feet in the blood of empires, I who flew so much higher than the mud that had birthed this human animal. I was the pinnacle of creation, and my brothers with me. Why had we been made to serve? I would not serve, not a beast like him. Ushara begins to crush Hadrian, who sees her through himself in the sky and the second Hadrian still on the ground. Again, he comprehends how insignificant he and his centuries-long war against the Cielsen truly is in the scale of the cosmos. But then light shines from beyond the sky, and he looks on as the Watcher seems to break apart. Hadrian is let go and plummets to the ground. His second self catches him, and then with a shock his vision returns to normal. The sky is now empty, and Hadrian realizes Edward was able to find the EMPs to disrupt Ushara's energy. Fire lights the sky above, and he then sees a large shard of black stone. Approaching it, Hadrian realizes it is the same material as the bones of the Watcher on Yue. More shards of bone litter the camp, and Hadrian knows they must all be destroyed. The bigger revelation, however, is that Ushara seemed to have implied she was made by the Quiet. The episode in the skies was the Watcher possessing Hadrian's mind. He and Ramanthanu then find the Minos Gaiska's destroyed physical body, though his mind is presumed to have been transmitted off-world. Hadrian finds curled pieces of glass around it, and with a chill finds the mechanical parts of Gaiska melted. The transmission would not have destroyed the device, indicating there had been some sort of power overload. A wicked smile suddenly stretches across his face, and with a cold rage he forces it down. Ushara has persisted in Hadrian's mind, a part of her enduring in his very body and relishing her freedom. A small sliver of her essence survived the bombardment by Albe and fled into Gaiska, and then transferred into Hadrian. To maintain the facade that Ushara has been utterly destroyed, Hadrian lies to Ramanthanu in order to maintain its loyalty. He must also lie to the surviving Hapsis forces, who believe they have scored a great victory. He only tells Cassandra the Watcher survived before collapsing of exhaustion and poisoning from arsine gas in the ruins. In the end, only 3,500 men survive Operation Nomon. Hadrian recovers and sets sail for Forum at once, issuing orders for Vanamhara and the nearby settlement to be razed. He makes amends for Cassandra, apologizing for leaving her on the Ascalon. Hadrian finally tells her of the Quiet, and how through that entity he has cheated death several times. After 2 long centuries of exile, Hadrian returns to the eternal city of Forum. To his surprise, within the royal party that greets him is none other than Princess Selena, who seems to have grown ever more in power, strength, and beauty. He realizes she has been put in fugue awaiting this day. It seems Selena has been sent at the behest of Crown Prince Aurelian, but Hadrian insists on an audience with Emperor William. He then learns the Lothrians have at last launched their offensive, falling upon Jad. It means the Jadians may withdraw soon from the Cielsen front to defend their own system, and it is revealed Aurelian has called for a war council with all the allies of the Empire. Hadrian meets with Aurelian, who demands to know why he had gone to Sabratha. He tells the prince everything, including the possession by Ushara. To his dismay, Hadrian learns he will not be able to get in contact with William for 4 years, as the Emperor is in transit. Pivoting, he argues a new case to go to Vorgassos, to find more powerful weapons to destroy the Watchers, the ancient ones designed by the Mericani. It turns out a contingent of extra Solarians, however, is coming to the meeting. Hadrian is advised to meet with the monarch of Latara then, and in the meantime is placed under protective watch by Aurelian. After 4 years, the time of the council arrives. Hadrian remains wary, knowing he still has many enemies on Forum still. The situation of the war is dire, with the Cielcen and Lothrians making substantial gains on both sides of the empire. It seems the Lothrians have also developed a clone army of hermaphrodites, significantly increasing their military power. Many lords speak up in defense of their realms, shouting to be heard. The emperor is then able to patch in via telegraph, and reveals to the lords that communications have begun with the extra Solarians. Many are shocked to learn Caelan Herondotes may soon become an ally of the empire, and in disgust several lords leave the council. Later, Hadrian and Cassandra attend the welcoming party for Herondotes. Several mechanical, otherworldly exalted disembark first, followed by a short man carrying a cane. Hadrian is shocked speechless, for it is Lorian Aristides, now the commandant general of the monarch's grand army. He watches as Lorian presents Prince Aurelian with a gift. At the Battle of Aragasa, he reveals, the monarch's forces destroyed 9 Cielcen world ships. Lorian then delivers the corpse of the Viaden general Teyanu, and asks for trade to open up between his people and the empire. Hadrian then pushes forward, letting his old friend see him, and asks if Herondotes can be fully trusted. Lorian asserts he can, and soon after, the crowd disperses. Lorian appears in the War Council and warns of lawlessness in the expanses of space outside Imperial reach. He reveals his forces had received advance warning of the attack on Aragasa, using revolutionary technology that can detect every telegraph sent across a range of several thousand light-years. This extends to Cielcen, and most concerningly, Imperial communications. Lorian offers to share this technology in exchange for the Empire renouncing its holds over the Norman expanse and formally recognizing Caelan Herondotes as a sovereign. If agreed to, it will be a monumental shift in the shape of the galaxy, reflective of various regions in space slowly beginning to break free from the eternal Solan Empire. Council sessions continue for weeks, with Cassandra and Hadrian languishing in Forum. Hadrian still waits for a chance to speak with the Emperor, and Edward then visits them with news he is to be transferred off-world. He shakes hands one last time with Hadrian, and slips him a paper note. After Edward leaves, Lorian visits Hadrian for the first time since he arrived. The two old friends catch up, with Lorian revealing that extra Solarians healed many of his physical ailments, though he refused to be given any mechanical implants. He has dinner with Hadrian and Cassandra, and seems to truly believe Caelan Herondotes can be a driver for good change. Later that night, Hadrian finally reads Edward's notes, and learns the Chantry will block his meeting with the Emperor. They also know of the Cielcen under his command, kept on the ship Gadelica and Fugue. Edward warns they will frame him for treason and possibly attempt violence. Days pass on Forum, and during that time Hadrian meets the Chantry Cantor Samek, who he knows has been keeping a close eye on him the entire time. She confronts him and reveals Lorian has been asking for atomic weapons for his fleet. Samek does not trust the extra Solarians, and asks Hadrian to discover what Herondotes is planning. She grabs his wrist as he tries to leave, and he wrests it away. He returns to his quarters to find Princess Selena waiting for him. Sweating, Hadrian learns the Chantry has raided his ship, and then Selena leans forward and kisses him twice. He cannot bring himself to respond to her affection as the room grows hotter. Hadrian suddenly begins to bleed from his hands and eyes, and he realizes Samek has poisoned him with dysphalide. He begins to physically melt where he stands, and calls for Nima. With his last breaths, he asks Nima to protect Cassandra, and to only trust Lorian and Edward. My last thought as my brain dissolved at last and ran out upon the floor was that Cassandra was alone. They had killed me. They would kill her, and there was nothing I could do. Hadrian again finds himself in the strange realm of death, and encounters a boy named Rag and a homunculus named Salt. They tell him he is below an old city, and the well of Nahaman. Salt and Rag plan to take him to someone called the Judicator. Hadrian has apparently been dead for a long time, and they begin climbing several miles up to the city. Rag speaks of kings who built the city above, but reveals the Judicator says they don't construct the well or the world. It is a gloomy climb, with many dead lamps along the way. Rag then says rather calmly that their sun is dying, and Salt reveals that it is the last sun at the end of time itself. Hadrian seems to have been dead for perhaps trillions of years, and they soon reach the city. It is called Blesu, Last City of Kings, and Hadrian recognizes it as the city from his apocalyptic visions on Vorgassos. They hide on the side of the road from several massive mechanical colossi, which Hadrian learns are the servants of an enemy. Hadrian is led into the heart of the city, where he is taken back underground into a tunnel. Salt and Rag show him a temple, and before the doors, Rag turns to Hadrian. He speaks in a different voice, calling him son of none as the doors open. On the walls inside are windows of men in red cloaks and angels, with large statues of many different creatures of devilish features. Hadrian notices many metal cables on the floor, but his attention is captured by where they all lead to. For there he sees a cradle, with a white figure kneeling before it. The figure rises, revealed to be Rag, and strides to Hadrian. Light pours from him, and Hadrian knows, somehow, he is one of the Watchers. I am the Judicator, Ragama. I am what they were meant to be, what they were before. Ragama reveals he is one who has kept his oath. That oath is to do what must be done for the good of creation. He asks Hadrian what he believes the Quiet to be. His head still reeling, Hadrian is speechless, but then Ushara within him answers, absolute. Ragama's eyes narrow, for he now detects Ushara's presence, and he clamps a hand over Hadrian's mouth. Within him, Ushara screams, and Hadrian is forced to stare into Ragama's blue eyes as he is commanded to name himself. He then sees from Ragama's eyes, looks upon his withered, broken self with the dark shadow of Ushara moving within him. Ragama then grabs Ushara and drags her out of Hadrian, and Hadrian then also senses the hatred flowing from Ushara. Ragama screams at Ushara, stating they were destined to shepherd the stars. Ushara had betrayed that purpose and chose to rule for herself, in doing so rebelling against her creator. In a moment of great trial, Ragama then asks Hadrian to let him kill Ushara. Fighting the Dark Watcher's influence and power, Hadrian simply utters, yes. Ushara is ripped away and vanishes, and he finds her presence in his mind gone as well. Ragama then appears again, this time as a kindly woman with silver hair. She again asks him, who is he, as part of a test. Hadrian responds, he is, to which Ragama laughs in agreement. He is that which has always existed, that which will always exist. Before the cataclysm that birthed your cosmos, he was there. It was at his command that the first photons were kindled. By his word, the first quarks condensed, the first atoms formed. He ordered the formation of the first suns, and set my brothers to keep and watch over them, to watch over everything. Nothing would be here without him. He created the universe? Yes, she said, every universe. Ragama reveals that this universe of Hadrian is dying out, thrown out of balance when the Watchers abandoned their post. Ushara's stars will soon burn out, and Ragama's purpose is to serve vengeance upon the Watchers for their sins. She tells Hadrian the servants like her are without number, but so too are the Watchers. Hadrian listens on as Ragama tells him it is their fates and existences that hang in the balance, not the creators. For even if this universe fades out, perhaps in trillions of years he will create another. The Watchers seek to break the cycle of creation, to unmake the unmade, usurp his place, build their own creation. They tried once before and paid for it, but they will never succeed. Everything that has a beginning has an end, child, and so he can never be destroyed, for he was never made. Hadrian struggles to grasp these revelations and lashes out at Ragama for using him as a pawn. Ragama commands him to look at her, and Hadrian then sees himself once more through the eyes of Ragama. I saw the snaking avenue of his life, his every second stretched behind him. I saw his deaths, his flesh dissolved in bloody foam, skin peeling away like white foil, his head struck off, plunged into still water. And I saw his life, heard his anguished cry at a black window, felt his knuckles smash the nose of a red king. I watched as he raised cairn after cairn with bleeding hands on a shelf above the sea, heard the noise of men screaming as a vessel moved to block the sun. He had suffered so much, lost so much. I saw battles and battles, death and death, pain, so much pain, so much love. I felt his love for the daughter he had not truly fathered, for the woman he had not truly wed. I watched as the Jadian sorcerers handed him a girl child wrapped in a towel white as snow, heard his weeping, felt his joy and sorrow mingling as he held the babe in his arms. I felt his heart break as he faced his woman's killer, and knew it had been his love that wrenched the power from his broken spirit. Then Ragama suddenly learns that Hadrian has heard his voice before, something not even granted to the most powerful of Watchers. Hadrian is told the Creator is trying to save humanity, to bring them into the next universe. Ragama states there is a choice for his kind, to stand with their Maker in glory or decay into darkness. She gestures to the cradle, and Hadrian steps forward. Inside is a large egg, the Creator. His time is the end of time. All your life, you have fought for the preservation of your race. That remains your fight now, but you must fight not for their survival, but for his cause. It is not his existence he desires. That is eternal. It is your existence and that of all the worlds he has made. You believe you fight to reduce the evil in what is. You fight to increase the good. Every person you save, every world left untrammeled by evil serves to increase the good in that final accounting. You ask why he does not end all that he has made, because the story is not yet finished, even now, and he will not end it until every beat of light has had its day. Ragama then offers Hadrian the chance to destroy the egg. It will free him from the shortest road ordained by the Creator, and effectively symbolize Hadrian rejecting him. Destroying that one incarnation is a choice freely given to him, one that will save all his friends in Valka. Another champion will be chosen, freeing Hadrian from his burden. And Hadrian longs to be free, free from the game of being a pawn and able to choose a new life. But he cannot bring himself to destroy the egg. He raises it in the air, but lets it fall back down and collapses, tears and sobs racking his body. Ragama's voice then booms down at him, again uttering, "This must be." Hadrian asks to be released, but then the Creator himself touches his mind. I felt as a child when, taken out beneath the night sky, he is first told that each of those little lights is its own sun, with its own worlds, its own life and history. Vast as our cosmos may be and infinite in depth, next to him it is nothing, as the meanest puddle is nothing when measured against all the seas of earth. I saw how he had made our creation, ordering it by his will. I watched as he set his servants, the Watchers, to guide and guard his great project, felt his grief as they betrayed his purpose, betrayed him. I felt his sorrow, deeper than human feeling and yet not strange. Always we were turning from the path, turning against him. He felt our every pain, witnessed our every torment, experienced every injury as if it were his own. Still, he would not stop us, for to stop us would be to destroy the very thing that made us what we are. He suffered to see our suffering, and so our suffering made us more like him, who knew our every hurt. Hadrian weeps, having misjudged the master of the Watchers, and feels great shame. He asks what he must do, and is shown a vision of the black ship Demiurge, the fortress of Karn Sagara. Ragama appears again as a man with fiery hair, his final form. He tells Hadrian he has passed the test, confessing he thought Hadrian would have destroyed the egg. Hadrian replies he could not bring himself to do so, for that would have also destroyed the world where he had had Cassandra. In response, Ragama smiles. Your kind is more like him than ours. You understand, then, why he will not unmake what he has made. Hadrian recalls the words of the Quiet uttered to him once before. We are beasts of burden, we men. We struggle, and by that struggle are filled. He understands now he must seek for Gossos, to find the weapon that can destroy the other Watchers. Hadrian renews his oath to see his course to its end, and Ragama draws forth a spike of twisted metal, glowing with fire. Ragama stabs Hadrian in the heart, and his world ends. He awakens in the land of the living, on a sullen warship. Hadrian finds his body renewed, his hands scarless and of true bone and flesh, and his hair black with no streaks of silver. All his scars are gone, and the phrase, "do what must be," keeps ringing in his head. He stumbles out into the hall and discovers he is on the Gadelica. Hadrian bursts outside to several bewildered workers and finds the ship is actually on an extra Solarian sojourner. Cassandra then appears, recognizing him but not believing it is actually Hadrian returned from the dead. Edward appears, and Hadrian tells him they must stop Doriaca, for the Pale King is allied with Ushara now on Darantun. Cassandra is in tears as Ramanthanu arrives and greets Hadrian. He learns it has been 2 days since his death, and Cassandra, Albe, and Lorien were all able to escape Forum and fly to Latara. To his surprise, Princess Selena has also joined them. Lorien also appears and immediately fires several shots at Hadrian. He uses his powers to make them all phase through him, convincing Lorien it's actually him. His friend introduces him to Tu Maeve, the chief security officer of his ship Mistwalker. Hadrian returns to his quarters and gazes at himself in the mirror. He finds he is, by all rights, physically perfect, all asymmetries and irregularities gone. However, his new face is also the one he has seen in his visions, giving the order to fire at will over Gododin. Later, he tells Lorien about the Watchers and why he needs to go to Vorgassos. He learns more of Kaelin Herondotes, and Lorien then reveals the monarchy needs the atomics because they hope to capture Cielson world ships for their own. As they sail on, Hadrian prepares Edward and Captain Goshal of the Gadelica for the upcoming negotiations with Herondotes. They must secure passage to Vorgassos, and will be asked to cede the Norman expanse and atomic weapons in exchange. However, one significant wrinkle is that they have effectively kidnapped Princess Selena in the eyes of the Empire, which marks them undoubtedly for death. More days pass, with Hadrian finding he no longer needs to sleep. Princess Selena asks to meet him, and upon Hadrian arriving kisses him many times. She confesses she has loved him for a long while, waiting for him. But Hadrian spurns her, and cannot bring himself to choose to love her. He fears that path will lead to power and dominion, and will repeat the cycle humanity has been subjected to since the days of the God Emperor. Cassandra, who has been ignoring Hadrian all this while, finally confronts him. She attacks Hadrian, and after a vicious brawl stabs him through the chest. But through his powers, Hadrian is unharmed, and he embraces Cassandra as at last she accepts he has returned. After years of travel, Hadrian and the others reach Latara. Lorien leads the landing party and reveals to the onlooking extrasolarian delegates he has brought the half-mortal and Princess Selena, in light of failing to secure a treaty with the Empire. After some waiting, Herondotes finally summons Hadrian for a private meeting. Not knowing what to expect, he is escorted down a hall, marveling at the majesty of the fabled printed city outside. There on a balcony he meets the monarch, a tall, imposing man who radiates power and strength. Hadrian realizes, however, that the printed city may be an illusion, and then turns and calls Herondotes Ren. The monarch smiles and pushes him over the balcony rail. The beauty of the city and building around them dissolves away, leaving only gray stone pillars and a throne room of countless cables. "You cost me my home, boy," said Kaelin Herondotes, who was Ren, who was Karn Sagara. It is revealed that Suzuha, Ren's sister who is also Karn Sagara, holds power on Vorgassos at the moment. She had driven Ren away, where he found a remote section in space and formed a new kingdom on Latara. None of his commanders know his real identity, even Lorien. Hadrian realizes the atomics Herondotes needs are actually to retake Vorgassos, for Ren seeks to reclaim the Demiurge, control the Brethren, and the planet itself. Hadrian talks with Herondotes about the Watchers and his quest to destroy them, but the monarch asserts they are impossible to defeat. Ren, Karn Sagara, then reveals he chose his life of immortality long ago not purely out of fear of death. Instead, it is a fear of hell. He claims the Mericani had seen the Watchers as programs designed to run the universe, and had even captured one on Vorgassos. They used the Watcher, called Solarnum, to raise the dead, something Sagara saw with his own eyes. He reveals some of the Mericani survived the First War of the God Emperor, and that some of the Exalted are direct descendants of them. Herondotes then agrees to help Hadrian take Vorgassos, but threatens to kill Cassandra if he tells anyone of his true identity. So a dangerous game begins for Hadrian, who decides he must somehow tip off Lorien without alerting Herondotes. Princess Selena is brought before Herondotes, who shows her a letter from the Empire accusing the monarchy of kidnapping her and declaring war. There is a tense discussion with Herondotes and his high court, and Selena offers to open a channel of negotiation between Latara and Forum. The talks take many weeks, but eventually Herondotes' terms are agreed to, a new treaty to be ratified by Imperial Prince Matthias. Plans begin to take Vorgassos, with the Empire planning to send a sentinel fleet of the Chantry. It makes for an odd pairing with the Extrasolarians. Hadrian has kept the secret of Herendotes locked away in his mind for months, continuing to desperately look for a way to alert his friends, especially Lorien. Prince Matthias arrives and signs the historic treaty, ceding thousands of worlds to Herendotes. Selena is to depart with him back to Forum. Matthias then addresses Hadrian directly, warning him he will not be given a chance to defy the Empire a third time. He leaves and Selena kisses Hadrian. As she turns to depart, Hadrian grabs her hand a last time, saying goodbye and secretly slipping a note with 5 words he hopes will save the mission. The monarch is Karn Sagara. The Extrasolarian fleet departs for Vorgassos on a journey that takes 9 years. They rendezvous with the Imperial warships at Merope, commanded by Lord Ohannes Doro and Kedron of the Sentinels. Hadrian puts his faith in Selena to warn William of Sagara's schemes. The fleet reaches Vorgassos and plans are made to take out its subterranean engine installations. Herendotes suggests they take shuttles down into the tunnels below to break into the main city as the fleet provides a distraction above. The attack begins, with no sign of the monstrous demiurge coming to the defense of the planet. Hadrian will be part of the ground team with Cassandra, Edward, Ramanthanu, and the remaining Cielsen, and the Urchtani. Their shuttles race down, looking to clear out the planetary gun emplacements to clear a landing zone. Hadrian makes landfall and joins the charge against the enemy's defenses. Herendotes' interface Extrasolarians join the Hapsis soldiers in taking out the living men and exalted of the other Karn Sagara, and they take the gates to the tunnels. Kaelin Herendotes also leads the attack, speaking to Hadrian on a private channel. Overall, there has been surprisingly little resistance. Ramanthanu then approaches Hadrian and reveals Dora Yeka had built the planetary engines for Vorgassos. The attacking force enters the tunnels, with Hadrian riding on a train beside Cassandra. They begin taking fire from railguns and suffer heavy losses, but Kaelin Herendotes arrives with his flyers and storms the guns. Hadrian orders Albe and the Hapsis men under his command to deactivate their comms. They hop on a flyer and pursue the fleeing defenders, but the ship takes a hit and is grounded. Herendotes leads a force against the doors of Vorgassos, using an antimatter charge to bring them down. As Hadrian fights through countless SOMs, however, he receives word from Lorien on the Mistwalker that the Demiurge has entered the fray. The city is secured, with Herendotes readying a final push to the palace. He then turns to his commander and gives a grievous order: to kill all the natives in the city in a massacre of tremendous magnitude. For Herendotes, it is necessary in case his sister had prepared any of the civilians to house her ghost. Hadrian knows in that moment he cannot let Herendotes leave the battle alive. He begins to plan to turn him over to Suzuha in exchange for her freedom and the Demiurge. The attackers reach the palace gates, which have already been opened by an advance force. News reaches them that Karn Sagara has been captured. However, it is revealed the captured prisoner is a man, not resembling Suzuha at all. Only Hadrian and Herendotes know this, however, and soon realize with horror that the man wears Hadrian's face. It is a clone of him, the result of blood taken from him by Father Calvert centuries ago. Hadrian knows there could be countless other copies of him, Sagara's attempt to gain his powers and ability to cheat death. Herendotes says nothing, gazing off into the distance as he hunts Suzuha remotely. The clone suddenly screams and electrocutes its guards, revealed to be an SOM. Hadrian cuts it to pieces, and one of its hands grabs onto an interface, one of Herendotes' Extrasolarians. Suddenly, all the other interface under the command of 2 Maeve turn on the Latarans and Solon legionnaires. The voice of the other Karn Sagara then resonates from them, and chaos erupts. Battle breaks out as Herendotes leads them to the lift. Only 40 make it inside, and once safe, a furious Hadrian reveals to everyone the Lataran monarch is a clone of Sagara. Herendotes, however, entices his men to stay loyal by offering them immortality, and then reveals there are dozens of Hadrian clones. The lift is attacked by more interfaced and defenders of Vorgassos. Hadrian, Cassandra, Ramanthanu, and Herendotes fight them off in a bloody battle, but their company is dwindled down to 17 survivors. In secret, Hadrian prepares a small telegraph remotely connected to another held by his friends above, a plan developed by him, Edward, Cassandra, and Captain Goshal before the battle. Presently, he follows Herondotes to the Tree of Life, and learns the monarch had supplied the code for the lethovirus plague in exchange for the location of Vorgassos. It is more millions of lives on the account of Sagara, all done for the sake of maintaining his eternal life. They move on to the Tree of Life, where Hadrian notices Mericani pods with humans inside. Herondotes reveals that the Mericani daemons that controlled the masses of people still in truth answer to the princes of America, humans themselves. He then plugs himself into a console, and Hadrian realizes he is attempting to take control of the scions of Vorgassos and effectively his heirs. Herondotes suddenly seizes up, and their squad suddenly begins to take fire from more SOMs. Then hundreds of the Sagara scion clones awaken in their tanks, and Hadrian orders his men to kill them all as they stumble out. Hadrian's surviving men cannot make it back to the lift, and are cut off by more scions. Then they begin to speak to him, revealing that each and every one of them is, in fact, Karn Sagara in the form of Herondotes. To hedge his bets of survival, he has decided to abandon Vorgassos and effectively scatter himself, his many scions, across the stars, not as extensions of one mind, but copies capable of independent thought and action. Then, the Suzuha form of Sagara sends out her drones, her 10,000 eyes, and begins culling the scions as they flee. Hadrian addresses the drones directly and betrays Herondotes. He offers the services of his soldiers to hunt down the remaining scions in exchange for peace. Suzuha laughs at him, and then Herondotes somehow fires 2 blasts of light at Hadrian from his eyes. His shields barely hold, and then Suzuha's drones open fire on Herondotes. He falls to the ground, and Hadrian is then summoned to meet the surviving Karn Sagara. His party is escorted by Sagara's drones, and Hadrian surrenders his sword to the golem Yume and is alone led towards the throne of the Undying. He strides through the wires and cables to find a gaunt, skeletal woman, Suzuha. Hadrian asks for the Demiurge, resolved to keep fighting the Watchers. Sagara is confident in her fleet's ability to defend Vorgassos, however. She goes further, even revealing that she had made first contact with the Cielsen 1,000 years before the Empire's first contact with the invaders. They were a scattered people, divided, aimless. I gave them the means to become great. Karn Sagara was the mechanism behind the Cielsen's ascension to the stars, the will that brought forth their terrible empire. She had given them the ability to telegraph, while secretly keeping a device of her own that allowed her to track all their messages. All along, the Undying has known every single one of the Cielsen's plans, stemming from the attack on Crescard to the summons of Dorayeka. Hadrian is floored, for billions of lives have been lost to Sagara's whims. I told you, when you last darkened my door, mankind is nothing to me. The Cielsen are nothing. I have other concerns. I am as old as your civilization. I was born on Omala, on New Ithaka, a planet that no longer exists. I slew the last of the Mericani, the true Mericani, here on Vorgassos. I have warred with 3 of your emperors across the ages, though that is forgotten. It was I who made first contact with the Cielsen. I am history, Marlowe. Should I be destroyed? Rage fills Hadrian, and he compels Sagara to take Herondotes' place in power on Latara. But she pushes for more, still seeking Hadrian's power to what she sees as true eternal life. Hadrian scorns her, and a drone opens fire. He draws his sword, simply knowing it will return to him. The deadly laser parts before him as he destroys it, and he then reveals his men have been laying mines beneath the reservoir to flood Vorgassos. But then Sagara reveals her last gambit, and none other than Valka emerges from great doors in the distance. It is a clone SOM made with Valka's incomplete memories, a near-perfect physical replication of Hadrian's paramour. Hadrian is speechless with terror, but regains his composure and again asserts he is simply a man, no clone or mechanical creation destined to live forever. However, he suddenly remembers how he had asked the Jadians to give Cassandra Valka's eyes. His daughter's eyes are green, and Hadrian recalls how in his visions, the other Hadrians he had seen all had green eyes as well. It is a profound moment, one he takes to symbolize the Absolute has been by his side all along. Remembering his love for Cassandra and the real Valka of his past, he turns and strikes Sagara. Hadrian becomes resolved to end talks with Sagara and kill her, He stands over the Undying and cleaves her head open with a sword down to her heart, destroying her transmitters. The Valka SOM is killed by a drone, and Ramanthanu and the Cielsen finally break in to find Hadrian cradling its body. Cassandra arrives and insists on accompanying Hadrian, who knows his next step is to see Brethren one last time. They travel down to the reservoir, that Black Sea where Hadrian had first encountered the Daemons centuries ago. 3 legionnaires also venture down with them, survivors of the battle in the palace as well as the loyal Cielsen. The water then stirs, and the familiar voice of Brethren returns to Hadrian, heard only by him. He commands the others to stay behind, and descends a staircase to the edge of the water. Your coming casts 2 shadows, child of clay. Backwards, forwards. Brethren states this was the path of highest probability, this last meeting between the two just one option of many. Hadrian asks for control of the Demiurge, but is told he does not have the same access to control as Karn Sagara would. Brethren mourns how it is the last of its kind, and several misshapen faces burst above the water. They tell Hadrian they cannot control the ship from inside the reservoir, nor give him the permissions needed to fly it himself. Hadrian knows he must destroy them as well, and Brethren utters, "This must be." Using his secret telegraph, Hadrian sends a signal to Edward. Albe triggers several massive explosions that blow open several drains in the reservoir. A huge wave falls upon Hadrian, but as it washes away, he remains dry and unharmed. Brethren screams as the water recedes, and Hadrian begins to follow it down. A vision suddenly strikes him, and he sees a woman speaking to a pale boy with a swollen head named Daniel. He is apparently to be taken to the angel Cheyenne, and Hadrian somehow knows the vision takes place on Catoctin, at the cyberization clinic on Richardson Naval Base. He flashes back to reality, and sees before him the massive mountain of flesh that is the dying Mericani. Countless faces cry out to him, and he is flung back into the vision. Daniel lies on an operating table, and Hadrian looks upon the boy from the perspective of a machine. He pokes a needle into Daniel's head and hears his thoughts. The machine turns out to be the angel Cheyenne, who tells Daniel he was ill, but promises he will never be sick again. Hadrian snaps back to the lakebed, and with a shudder reflects how similar the experience was to viewing the cosmos from the eyes of Ushara. Brethren dies before him, the last of its kind and crude imitation, Hadrian realizes, of the Watchers themselves. Flashes of vision pass before him, and he sees himself arriving at Fort Grissom to soldiers and men mixed with machines, the military might of the Mericani. I remember Earth falling, the news coming to us by slow ship, years too late. The rebels had bombarded the planet, destroyed the devolved capitals in London, Brasilia, and Rome, destroyed Washington herself. Fort Grissom, stationed on a relatively remote world in space, was hidden and thus able to endure the revolution of the first god emperor. Hadrian watches as a black tablet, a bone fragment of a watcher, is brought to him. Time passed, and men and I was dying. A man called Crown and Shield returned from a raid with fresh bodies for my matrix, the very tree of life wherein Karn scions had slept, and a small boy in tow, a creature with bronze skin and dark, mistrustful eyes. It was Ren, and with a start I knew it was Karn Sagara, the first one, the boy his mother had brought into the world. Hadrian returns again to the real world, and then the dead brethren suddenly shudders. A massive giant tears itself from the body and screams out into the world. It turns to a stunned Hadrian and calls him the man to end it all. Hadrian wonders aloud if it is still Brethren, but then realizes it is born of Cheyenne, which was the main body of Brethren and one of the daughters of Columbia. The beast calls itself Orphan and grabs Hadrian with incredible strength. It reveals it was made by Brethren out of human flesh, but given entirely free will. Hadrian suddenly knees it, flooring Orphan. He draws his sword and commands it to yield. Orphan begins to cry and seems to know it will be destined to kill billions. It knows of the Quiet, and Hadrian convinces it to serve him and pilot the Demiurge, ordering Orphan to swear loyalty to him in the name of Cheyenne. Hadrian and Orphan depart the lakebed and the body of Brethren. He contacts Edward and informs him of Karn Sagara's death. Hadrian searches for Cassandra and Ramanthanu, and finds them battling the surviving scions who escaped Zuzuha's purge. He calls out to Cassandra, but in doing so distracts her. A scion cuts off her upper left arm and destroys her high matter sword. Another scion gloats to Hadrian, revealing they are taking the Demiurge and look to take out the planet's geothermal station, effectively destroying Vorgassos. The lights go out, but then the Urchtani arrive and kill the rest of the scions. They had been sent by Edward, and Hadrian orders them all to flee the city and chase down the Demiurge. He worries they may be too late as they fly to the ship falling away from Vorgassos. However, the Gadelica boards the Demiurge and the Legionnaires begin securing the massive ship. As he stares out into the blackness of space, another vision takes him. Hadrian is shown Darantun, the world ship of Dora Yeka. He flies through its halls, passing through more than a dozen pillars of several watchers. He passes scenes of feast and gruesome pleasure, the hellish war machine of the Cielsen. He at last comes to Dora Yeka, the pale king and now bride of Mudanar. Dora Yeka then stares directly at Hadrian and speaks to him. "You have changed, kinsman. I am becoming. I am almost here." For Dora Yeka has nearly fully awakened Mudanar the Dreamer within its body, and through the Watcher's powers brought Hadrian's essence across space to see. A tall, cold woman with dark hair then enters as well, and wraps her arms around Dora Yeka. She is Ushara, its queen, and together they have set upon a path of war against the Quiet and their creator, the Absolute. Dora Yeka grabs Hadrian, who breaks its hand and cuts himself. He then flashes back to his ship and finds himself still bleeding. Knowing then what he experienced was no vision, Hadrian looks down and sees one of Dora Yeka's fingers on the ground. He turns to Orphan and orders its guards to release it, while slipping Dora Yeka's finger in his pocket. Orphan will be the pilot of the Demiurge, and preparations begin to destroy Vorgassos once and for all. There are endings, reader, and this is one. Some endings are beginnings, as I have said. Such was that day. It had already seen the end of the Mericani, the death of their last machine. It had seen the death of Latara, of the New Order, the new galaxy of which good Lorien dreamed. It would see the end of Vorgassos in but a short hour's time. But it was a beginning as well, would be a beginning. That day had given me the Demiurge, and with it the means to become what the Absolute demanded I become. That day was, would be, the beginning of the Sun Eater.